Welcome, everyone. Let me put Danny up there. Hey, there's the star of the show. Danny Shimon. Welcome, everyone. I'm Aldo Gandia, and that is Danny Shimon. Welcome to another episode of Draft on Tap. We were off last week celebrating Valentine's Day. What'd you do, Danny? Did you take your inflatable doll out for a date?
No. It was an actual live breathing woman with
Nice.
some blood flowing through her veins.
Nice. All right.
We went out for a nice
Yep.
dinner. Nothing
up in the
fancy.
world.
Nothing like you, Mr. Gandia, pull out the roses and
Yeah.
candy and all that stuff and candlelight stuff afterwards. And
yeah, had the full work and then didn't score. So
we'll take that for the after-hour show.
That's right. Like the Bears offense, get in the red zone and don't get it in. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in to Draft on Tap. We got a really great show for you planned. Ian Cummings, the draft analyst over at Pro Football Network, is going to join us in about a minute. Danny and him are going to talk about some prospects, and then I'll ask both of them to evaluate my mock draft. I've only done a handful this season, but it's always fun to do one before free agency starts and then do one afterwards. And then any more than that is just a waste of time. So
it's February 21st. You've already done a handful of mock drafts. Come on.
Yeah, right. It's true. It really is true. I'm not like Berlissimo, who by now has probably done 6,347. But
I think he's got every combination going number one overall to the Bears.
Indeed.
Berlissimo.
And then Danny and I are going to look at some free agent safeties now that it's official that Eddie Jackson is no longer a member of the Chicago Bears. So we've got a full show. Let's bring it.
And receivers list as well for the Bears.
That's right. That's right. So we got a lot planned. And, of course, we'll answer any and all of your questions. Let me bring in the man of the hour. His name is Ian Cummings. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing good. Happy to be here. Happy to talk draft with you guys. It's kind of the main topic this time of year. So it's been fun. The Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl was in the rearview mirror. We got the NFL Combine coming up this week. Free agency will answer some more questions and kind of give us a clearer picture, right? But, hey, still a long way to go. Still a lot to talk about.
Indeed. Danny asked you where you were, and you mentioned Michigan. So are you a Lions fan?
I grew up a Lions fan. Yeah, I was around 10 years old for that 08, 0-16 season. So I vaguely remember it, and it is a little bit of sadness there. But hopefully they're ramping up. I'm excited for things under Motor City, Dan Campbell. But, as I've become an evaluator, I've kind of tried to stay neutral, objective. Like, I will enjoy when they're successful, but I got a job to do, right? I don't want anything to sway me. So I grew up a Lions fan for sure, though. Also a little bit Michigan State, so Kirk Cousins was my guy growing up. But yeah.
Very cool.
I got to ask, I don't mean to rub this in, but have you guys gone over that 17-point bowl lead?
It's a little raw, Danny. It's a little raw.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'll push through it.
Hey, Ian,
guys, man, I was rooting for you guys big time.
Yeah,
I can't say I was. But I have a lot of respect for how that team has been built. Excellent draft picks. Holmes has just done a fabulous job. So congratulations on that. Hey, for our viewers, could you please tell them exactly what you do over at Pro Football Network? I have read probably 1,000 or more of your analysis on players as I've played around with the excellent mock draft simulator there. But why don't you let people know what you do over at Pro Football Network?
Yeah, so it's twofold. It's scouting reports and it is the MDS. I have a direct impact on how I kind of manage that too. So scouting reports, I watch tape, I write my notes, and then I kind of consolidate it into scouting notes and have a summary in there too. So I try to write up as many guys as I can. And then I also have a direct impact on the MDS. We'll have meetings about rankings and where guys are at, right? And we'll talk about those things too. And we'll also do updates. So scouting on that side, kind of getting the bare information of what we use to divert other things like rankings, the big board, the MDS, all of those things. I'm kind of a central force of that. So I really enjoy it. And I take a lot of responsibility in making sure that the information is up to date, it's in depth, and it's comprehensive, and it gives you the clearest picture that you can get of those prospects. And it's always a learning process, but it's a fun time from start to finish.
Outstanding. All right, I'm going to step out of the picture and let you and Danny have at it. Have fun.
Yeah, thanks, Aldo. So, Ian, yeah, you mentioned, with the East-West Shrine game being done now, the Senior Bowl being done, Combine coming up next week, we're kind of hitting that middle tier, that stretch drive here with the whole pre-draft process. So, just kind of starting off in terms of, where prospects started on your board. I'm not sure if you've gone through and started putting together your big board, but, who has if anyone, whether offense, defense, have really taken that next step, in your opinion, and really has a chance to kind of, jump into maybe day one, maybe go from a day 3 guy to a day 2 guy, depending on what they do here at the combine, obviously a pro days. Is there 1 or 2 players that kind of stick out to you on top of your head?
Yeah, I'll give up 2 that are pretty clear at the top of my head. I think Darius Robinson, I saw he was on the show sheet too, the Missouri defensive lineman, but he was a guy who actually graded pretty highly for me toward the end of the year. I actually had a top 35 grade on him coming out of the season, and then seeing him tear up the Senior Bowl like he did was very impressive. But I mean, 6'5", 286, 35-inch arms, right? He's got very good size and length, and at the same time, explosive, really good finesse, really good power component. The alignment versatility is there to be a 3-tech, a 5-tech, right? He's got a ton of flexibility with how you can use him. I liken him to a Danico Autry at his maximum, right? And I think that kind of disruptive versatility is really appealing. So he was kind of a fringe day 2 guy, right, coming in, but we're seeing some mock drafts where he's sneaking in around 1. So I think he's been a riser from that tier. And then a day 3 to day 2 guy, Malik Washington from Virginia, I think is the biggest one that I've seen. I think he was on the mock draft too, so that'll be fun to talk about him more. But he's the quintessential slot receiver. I think just his receiving chops, his route running ability, and he's so tough. He's only 5'9", 182 around there, or 5'8", 192. I got those switched up, but he plays beyond his frame. He's very tough at the catch point, just a really reliable receiver. I think we get caught up in all the measurables, right? But if you can separate and catch the ball, you're going to have a long career, and I think he fits that profile.
Yeah, 2 guys that really caught my eye as well, Ian. I mean, talk about Darius Robinson. Obviously, his tape in Missouri, speaks for itself. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and it really just lights it up. And like I said, what I like about him is the same thing, man. I like that versatility. Like the Bears here play a 4-3, and we're predominantly scouting for the Bears defense, and I think he fits predominantly in that outside edge, opposite of Montez Sweat. But he's got the length, he's got that that good sturdy frame. But then I kick him inside as a 3 technique on passing downs. I think he's even more effective there. I think that's what he showed us there at the Senior Bowl. And Malik Washington, talk about it. Guy was here at Northwestern and really had a nondescript, collegiate career playing. That shows how bad the quarterback play was at Northwestern. Goes to Virginia and just explodes. Leads the ACC with 110 receptions, over 1,500 yards, and he's really the East-West Shrine game. He was unguardable, and I think he's another guy that's really struck out. So 2 good guys, and yeah, we'll touch on both those guys probably later on in Aldo's mock draft, but. Sticking to the defensive side, and again, we're inundated here with the quarterback talk, obviously with number 1 pick, and we're on like who's following who now on Instagram. That's how bad it is here in Chicago. So going to that side, and obviously edge rusher is a huge need for the Bears, and I think receiver is another huge need for the Bears. So obviously this has been deemed a non great draft, if you will, for edge guy, but I think you can find a guy. If you go past the first top 3 guys, I think you can find a guy late day 2, maybe even early day 3. That might not fulfill all their needs, but could be what I call a speed rusher off the edge. And one guy I want to kind of talk to you about, and a guy that I had earmarked prior to this whole draft process is Isaac from Penn State. Now, Chop Robinson gets all the hype because of he's probably the quintessential rush end, but I think Adisa Isaac really comes on, and I think he came in with 34-inch arms measure at the East-West at the Senior Bowl, and I think that first step quickness. Really tough against the run for a guy with a slender frame at edge. Talk about Adisa Isaac. I think he's a guy that could potentially go in that late day 2 probably range. What do you think? Yeah,
I think he's actually a top 50 guy for me. So I think, you're looking at him probably early to mid day 2. I think he'll test very well. The athleticism, those Penn State guys are always very well trained when it comes to that aspect, right? So I think there's a little bit of an injury history, right? I believe he tore his Achilles ahead of the 2021 season, but he came back in 2022, played well, and then obviously 2023, 7 sacks, 15 tackles for loss. So, you mentioned it, just the all-around disruptive ability that comes with this guy is very impressive. And I think the Senior Bowl was kind of a representation of that, where he's got the lateral agility, right? He's got the explosion off the line. He's got the bend, right, to kind of press those angles and kind of corner the arc. But he's very long, too, 6'4", 250, 34-inch arms, really good power profile, shock in his hands, very good pursuit motor. I think with Adisa Isaac, you've got a guy who still has yet to put everything together, but it's starting to click with him. And then the physical palette of tools, the full palette of tools is there. So, for me personally, right, and I think his character evaluation is really going to just leave rave reviews as well. I think he has 3 nonverbal siblings, and he's been taking care of them too. He built his way back from injury. He was a team captain. There aren't a lot of red flags with this guy. If he passes the medical check, I think he'll definitely rise up the board. But I think for the Bears, because you look at him and Chop side by side, Chop Robinson, I'm a big fan of his because I think he's that alignment versatile disruptor who you can just get him anywhere. And he's so maniacal. He's so explosive and twitchy, and he's got a lot of power inside his compact frame. Like, he can be that disruptive force. But Adisa Isaac for the Bears, right? Even front, you want a guy who can play with his hand in the dirt. You want a guy who can have the strength to hold up the run, hold up the edge and run defense, and also make plays in pursuit, stacking and shedding. I think he fits more of that traditional mold, while also having the upside to expand beyond that. So for me, he's a very fun player. I think top 50 is where he's going to go. I think you're going to have to get him within that range. But if you can do that, impact player.
Another thing I know about Adisa is like he's that emotional guy up front. I said Chop is the prototypical guy that NFL teams drill for in terms of that quick twitch, that first step quickness, and even the length. But I think Adisa is that heart and soul of that defensive line in terms of the way he would galvanize the other guys and just kind of rally everyone. And again, for me, I think where he stands out a little bit better than Chop is his ability to play the run. And again, for a guy who's slightly smaller than Chop, I think that's where I think he kind of sticks out for me. And again, gives you some of that speed off the edge as well. Not as bendy as Chop, bending the corner, but I think a guy that gives you that effort and that edge. Again, you're looking for a guy that's going to come in and rush opposite of Montez Sweat. I think he'd be a nice fit for Chicago. A couple other guys that we want to touch on real quick. Someone that I'm not as high on, but I know a lot of our listeners like him, and that's Chris Braswell from Alabama. I think his measurables don't fit with what the Bears like to do here, especially at end. Matt Eberflus in the last couple of years, his drafts, he likes length. He likes guys with, he's got those long arms, that the big 6'3", 6'4" guys, whether it's interior guy, outside guys. And I think just the sub 33-inch arms is what we came in at Braswell came in at the Senior Bowl. I think will be something that might even kick him outside to a 3-4 outside linebacker. So just, but I know a lot of people in our chat room do like Chris Braswell. Just give us a quick take on Braswell from Alabama.
Yeah, I think he is best in a stand-up linebacker role, outside rush linebacker role. I think that's kind of where he is. I don't know if he has the profile to rush with his hand in the dirt, like play the strong end, but I do think, from wider alignments, there is enough play strength there to get it done. So I think, not a true schematic fit for the Bears unless they employ more odd hybrid fronts, right? If they do some more of that personnel flexibility. But I do think, you are getting a guy. He doesn't have great length, but he has shown that he can convert to speed to power. He's got a really good speed to power game, and I think that comes from timely extensions, really good efficient arm load and elbow load, and kind of shooting his hands into the torso, and then also loading his base to sustain that power drive. And then he's got the workman-like hands to stack moves off of those initial power exertions. So I really think, as a rush linebacker in those odd front schemes, he's got a good fit. For the Bears, it's a little tricky because is that what he is? I don't think so. But, there are some tools to work with there. Not quite as high a ceiling as Dallas Turner, opposite from him, but still a solid player.
And in terms of talking about converting speed to power, this guy that I have to do some more tape study on is Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. He's a guy that talks about effort, mortars, runs hot all the time. Give us, and I think he popped in terms of at the Senior Bowl. Some of those team drills and 7-on-7s and even team-on-team drills there as well. So give us your take on Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan.
Yeah, if you need a guy to put his hand in the dirt, he's 6'3", 268, and he's got 34-inch arms. So he's the fun part with him is that he can play with his hand in the dirt, and he's shown that he can do 3-point stances, 4-point stances, but he can also do 2-point too. He's actually a pretty good guy rushing from space. And watching his usage at Western Michigan was fun because there were some reps where they shaded him out over the zero tech, over the center, and just let him be that battering ram. And he's so powerful with his natural leverage, his proportional length, his explosiveness, and he can just tear holes into the offensive line. I think he's pretty good at stacking moves outside of that too. You saw at the Senior Bowl, the motor is definitely there. He's a dude who never rests. The bend capacity isn't quite there as much with him. That's kind of the trade-off, right? He's very powerful, very explosive, high motor guy, strong run defender, not the most flexible around the arc, and you're going to see him lock his hips out when he does try to threaten under that. But I think if you're looking for a power guy who can really pinch the pocket opposite Montez Sweat and then provide very good run defense, he's definitely got that profile. So I think for the Bears, probably one of the better fits in the group.
All right, so flipping on offense, obviously you talked about Malik Washington could be a guy that could come in here later rounds and be a receiver option. And I'm also looking for interior offensive linemen. Are there a couple of guys that caught your eye, whether it's East-West Shrine Game or the Senior Bowl, that you think are guys that could potentially, again, the Bears are going to be running. They brought in, the Shane Waldron, who's a disciple of the Sean McVay, a wide zone, inside zone kind of scheme. So, you need some athletic guys here, the guys that can maintain their blocks moving laterally. Any guys stick out to you on the interior of the offensive line?
Yeah, I think, there are a few guys who have that position flex to play guard, or were kind of experimenting at center too during those weeks. And that's kind of a big thing for teams, is that, kind of seeing if they can snap the ball, right? Seeing if they have comfort there, if there's some projectability. A few guys that stood out to me during All-Star week, Brandon Coleman from TCU during the Senior Bowl was a little up and down during the week, but he had pretty good tape at TCU, really good tackle tape in 2022, which was interesting. Right. And at guard, he played a little bit. He switched between those positions in 2023, but he's a fun one for me because he's still pretty young as a football player. He didn't start playing football until I think his sophomore and junior year in high school. He was a basketball guy before that, right? So, he switched over and he's still picking up the ins and outs of the position. But he is very athletic. He was on Feldman's Freeze with 35-inch vertical, I think. He's 6'4", 316 with 34-inch arms. And, he's very good at playing square to his opponents. He's got lateral mobility. The really good flashes of hand usage on tape, too. So I think a lot of the building blocks that you need are there. He's explosive, hinging out as a puller, right? But he's got that strength and leg drive to play as a zone blocker too. So I like him a lot. Dominic Cooney from Kansas is another one that I like a lot. He had a really good Senior Bowl week. He was one of the best linemen there. But he was actually doing some center flex too. He was kind of taking snaps there, and I thought he looked good. So maybe an experiment that you can go through with him. But another very explosive, athletic guy with a well-proportioned frame, really physical. He's got that torque to finish reps. And I think that he's got some position flex across the line too. Like, he's played tackle before. You can put him at guard if you want. I think there's a lot of freedom for you if you're the Bears. Just kind of put him where you want, and he can play that position. Christian Mahogany from Boston College. One more that I will add. Center, doesn't have experience there. He was taking some snaps at the Shrine Bowl. I think he was a little up and down in that, so you want to see if he can project there. But again, 6'3", over 310. The dude's a powerhouse, right? He just has so much physicality. Yeah, he's a mauler. He will finish you. He will bury you in the dirt, and he will not be shy about it. He's got very good anchor strength, core strength, grip strength, and he's very good at driving through and maintaining those anchors through reps. And then as a pass blocker, I think he's very good at picking up stunts. I think he's got good anchor and extension timing. So those things, right, kind of add up. I think he's just a solid starter who can kind of set the tone for you. So those are a few. I think this is a strong class for having that guard center flex. I think there's a few guys who kind of fit that mold. But for the Bears, if they're looking for top guys, those stand out.
Yeah, Coleman really, really impressed me. And I think you mentioned him kicking inside or playing some tackle. I think he could do both. I mean, he's got the athletic ability of feet to be able to slide, shuffle, and protect on the outside left tackle. And if he doesn't work out well, he can kick inside a guard. So, obviously the Bears think they have their left tackle of the future here in Braxton Jones. So you can bring in a kid like Coleman. You can probably pluck him in at a guard. If Jones, for whatever reason, gets hurt, or Coleman can slide over left tackle and get you out of a game. So I think he gives you that position versatility at tackle guard, where I think he's a really, really interesting character there as well. So yeah, some really good. I think this draft class in terms of the offensive line is probably one of the better ones we've seen in the last couple of years. So you touch on Mahogany, a guy that, like I said, is a mauler. Yeah, you're right. I think at guard he does get a little bit extended. I think kicking him inside the center might be probably his best position moving forward at the next level. But a couple guys that I liked at center. And I guess center is a big thing here, and a guy that I think fits perfectly. And obviously we didn't see him play much at the Senior Bowl because of an injury, but is Zach Frazier from West Virginia. He's a guy that I think got that athletic trait, the ability to move laterally, maintain his blocks. I like the way he releases to that second level. Touch a little bit on Zach Frazier from West Virginia at center.
Yeah, and he gets drowned out sometimes because Jackson Powers Johnson is just such a good player, right? And rightly so. JPJ is going to be a top 20 guy on my board. I think he's well worth a first-round pick. But Zach
Frazier, center or guard though? Center or guard?
I think he could play both. I would probably keep him at center just because he's such a young player and he's already shown an affinity for the position, right? He's got very good football IQ. You can see that. I would let him grow within that. But if you do have a center already, I mean, the dude is 6'3", 330, and he's going to, again, he's a mauler. He's super athletic. He's very good at driving. I think the upside is there to play both positions at a high level. Just for me, with how important the center position is, just for calling out protections, right? Being that fulcrum of the line. I want a guy like JPJ holding that unit together, right? So that's kind of my thought process. But I think both. But Zach Frazier, gets overlooked, I think, because of his presence. And I think we need to give him some credit, because he's a very good player in his own right. I was such a big fan of him when I watched him initially earlier in the fall, right? But this is a guy who is, well-sized. Again, he's got enough strength and power, all those things, but he's a good athlete. Like you said, I think he's pretty good moving in space. He's very flexible. I think that's the thing that stands out to me. This is a guy who definitely has the mobility to get to his spot, but also has the hinge flexibility to be controlled and not overrun his blocking angles and then hinge around and seal guys off on the backside. I think he's very assignment sound. He's a high IQ football player, and that high football IQ and angle awareness allows him to maximize his athleticism and his mobility and his power, right? So I think you have a really good blend of athletic physical tools and also the mental acuity to play the position at a high level with him. Not quite the, elite talent that JPJ is, but still a guy who, if you get him in top 50 and the Bears are in that range where they could take him, right, I think you're getting a guy who's going to lock down that position for 10 plus years. And the really impressive thing is he missed part of the year with the injury, right? And he was almost ready to play again at the Senior Bowl. He wanted to play again, but they're like, nah, we're going to hold you out. Just do, some little, drill work, right? But he was working his way back, and just that recovery time, it shows that he grinds off the field too, and you'd like to have that.
And I'm a big nerd when it comes to offensive linemen, and guys that are like to finish, and the guys are nasty. And JP's got that. Jackson Powers got some nasty. And you just if you guys want to watch some fun tape, watch Jackson Powers pulling and meeting that defensive end that's trying to pinch inside and have him just wallop that guy and send him over to the next area code or whatnot. But that guy is fun to watch. So, but just kind of going back to the offense and defense, I guess the players overall. Is there, someone that you see right now that no one's talking about, right? It could be any position. It could be at safety, corner, defensive linebacker, anything that no one's talking about. The mainstream media is, it's not really, bringing him up. But you say this is a guy that's either going to show out at the, at the combine coming up, or, in his pro days, and he's going to eventually, be one of those hot risers, right before the draft time.
I mean, how much time you got? Because I feel like there's one at every position. I'll limit myself. But I'll start with one who was on the show sheet, Kieran Amagaji. And I think people are starting to talk about him more because Dane Brugler from The Athletic wrote a great piece about him, kind of profiling him, right? But this is a guy who really caught my eye in the summer, right? Because you watch his Yale tape, and it's very clear from the start the physical tools did not belong at the FCS level. I mean, the dude is 6'5", 320, over 36-inch arms. He is explosive out of his stance. Very good recovery capacity, very good agility for his size and kind of fleet of foot, but he's powerful too. I mean, he's so forceful with his extensions, his grip strength is suffocating, and he's got the, lower body freedom to kind of realign his base well anchored and keep leverage through reps. So I think Kieran Amagaji, there was that 2020 season that was canceled due to COVID, and he could have, stalled out, but he used that time to refine his game and come back even stronger. So again, that's another thing that you really like to see from a player. He's got tackle and guard experience. I think at guard, he could be an absolute road grader with his explosiveness and power. But I also think the leveraging is there and the tools are there to be a potentially dominant tackle as well. So a ton of upside with him. And then you mentioned safety. So a couple of safeties that stand out on my mind here. I think Malik Mustafa from Wake Forest is one that no one talks about. 5'10", 208. The dude's a missile coming downhill. He's explosive. He is very, very physical. He will make you feel his impact. But I also think he's got some pretty good coverage utility too. He's got a nice back pedal. He's pretty instinctive, good reaction speed. I think that physicality and that two-phase ability will really endear him to teams. And then Keaton Oladapo from Oregon State is another one. 6'2". He measured in almost 220 pounds at the Senior Bowl, but he moved very well. He was really good in coverage against tight ends. And on tape, you see that, right? Again, a very instinctive, fluid player for his size. I think those are two guys who really could. Safeties, it's always a situation with safeties where sometimes guys fall down the board because there's so many niches at that position. But those guys, you put them in the right role. I think Malik Mustafa, let him run and hit things and explode and attack, and he's got that ability. Keaton Oladapo has kind of got that versatility, right? But tight end eraser tools as well. Those are two guys who I think need to get a little more credence.
Cool. Great stuff. Now, I said to say we're not going to talk about quarterbacks, so we're going to stay away from the number one overall pick. But you're a Michigan guy, and I've been told by a couple of people that work in the NFL, the guys I respect, that JJ McCarthy is guys that they like a lot. And I watch, and Jordan Silver just popped up there on our chat, and he loves JJ McCarthy, and so I watch him, and I know he runs a pro style system. I know he's got the height, he's got above average arm strength. I just don't see it with JJ. Now you're a Michigan guy. Sell me on JJ McCarthy. Tell me why he's going to be a good pro quarterback.
No, I will say I grew up a Michigan State fan, so that would incentivize me to. No, I stay objective. Don't worry. JJ McCarthy is a polarizing prospect because the tools are there. I think he's a very athletic guy. I think the arm is very good. It's kind of a loose, elastic release. He's a little bit lighter, so it doesn't always have that heft of a guy like a Josh Allen. But he does. You see it when he gets that full rotation. He has the velocity to hit those tight windows in the intermediate range, right? That is there for sure. And he's got the arm elasticity to maintain that off platform too. So, I think all the talent is there. With McCarthy, the biggest question is down the stretch. Michigan, they were in big games, right? And they often were able to control those games because they got a great offensive line, a great defense. But you didn't, through 2 full years of starting experience, you didn't have a lot of moments where McCarthy was asked to elevate his team, right? Where he had a lot on his plate and where he had to deliver something to them, right? It was more, he was managing it. They weren't winning in spite of him, right? He was playing good, but not a lot of elevation moments for a guy who's probably going to go early first round. So that's kind of a question. Can he do it if we need him to at the NFL level, right? So my stance is, and diagnostically too, you can look at the tape, there were some really good moments early on in the year because I wanted him to improve his poise in the pocket, right? I wanted him to become a little bit more consistent as a processor and with his field vision. And I think we saw flashes of that early on in the year, but we didn't get to see it sustained through the year, right? So for a guy who's so young, right, you do want to see that consistent, constant developmental track upward. We didn't quite see that. So if he gets in the right spot, can he do that? It's a question. And right now, I don't think there's a clear answer. So for teams, it's going to come down to, does he interview well, right? Are we confident in the mentality that this guy has? Are we confident with that? Because the tools are there for sure. But I think the developmental track is not linear right now. There's still room for him to keep growing on the operational side. And for quarterbacks, sometimes things like field vision, it doesn't always fully click if you don't have it at the collegiate level. So it's a question for sure. I think the talent is there. I think there's still operational things to work on. For teams, it's going to be about, does he have the mentality to chip away at those and make that growth happen?
You have to guess. He goes first round, you think?
I think he goes first round. He's young. He's talented. He's 21 years old. So I think, do I have him graded there? I kind of have him graded on the round 1, round 2 fringe. But he's young. He's talented. We know how powerful that QB tax can be. Someone is going to invest in that, right? And he's very talented. Like, I don't want to gloss over the talent. I don't want to say he's not worth it just because my grade says he's kind of on the fringe, right? My evaluation is limited. I don't have access to the character as much as these NFL teams do. So that's a big part of it. So we'll see what they say. He's talented, but I think he goes early first round just because after those top 3, there is scarcity there, and he's the youngest, most talented guy on the board.
Great stuff. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is have you guys take a look at my mock draft. And this is actually pretty cool for me because I got Ian Cummings here. I read all of his analysis of these prospects. So he clearly has had some input into this draft. So this is going to be kind of weird getting his reaction to it. If he hates my draft, then I'm going to say, well, you like some of these guys. But the screen that I put this through is that the decision has been made to keep Justin Fields as the number 1 quarterback and trade the first pick overall for assets. And you'll see that I made a trade here with New England Patriots that brought back a pretty good haul. In reality, it probably would be more. But also, I wanted to focus on now providing Justin Fields with the weapons that he needs in order to get to that next level. Like Tua got to the next level with the acquisition of Tyreek Hill and so forth. So that was the thinking behind this draft. So after trading the first overall pick to the New England Patriots and getting back their third pick, their 34th pick, their 68th pick, and a first and second rounder from New England in 2025, I drafted Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State. That complements DJ Moore at the other wide receiver position, a big playmaker, big body, can play the X receiver, and will be the heir apparent to the number one overall wide receiver position for the Bears. Then the defensive end. I truly believe it's important for the Bears to add in a quality defensive end opposite Montez Sweat. That will elevate the defense. The defense made a huge leap in 2023 in the second half of the season, and they can make a huge leap to perhaps being a top 5, top 7 defense if they can get a solid pass rush. And Latu was there at 9, and I picked him over guys like Jared Verse and so forth. Then because of the departure of Eddie Jackson, I picked Cameron Kitchens out of Miami. He's that center field safety, can cover a lot of ground, has great instincts. And then the acquisition of Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator, saw that he works a lot in 12 packages. And so Jatavian Sanders was there at 68, the tight end from Texas. Want to build the rushing attack. As Danny says, the Chicago Bears are really a running team. And so even if you add Marvin Harrison, we're going to run the ball. And Audric Estime, I think, could be the best running back in this draft. And he was there at 75. Big playmaker on at the wide receiver position, chose Malik Washington out of Virginia. You guys talked about him earlier, and you also talked about offensive guard Christian Mahogany at 123. And then with the last draft pick, took a developmental edge player. Ian, you wrote about Javon, that he's impressed people at workouts and so forth. So I'm interested to get the latest, your opinion on your latest thoughts on Javon. So that's the draft. I'll start with Ian, and then Danny, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I'm not super fond. No, I'm kidding. I like it a lot. I was gonna get you with the bait and switch, but no, I like it a lot. I think at all levels you're filling needs. I really like. Well, first off, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't really think I have to go into that too much, right? We know how good this guy is, right? We know how good he can fit this offense. But that X receiver, just the way that he can separate at his size, is uncanny. You do not see it often at all. So I think getting that guy opposite DJ Moore is incredible. I think Latu is a really fun fit with Sweat, because Montez Sweat, he's that powerful guy who can forklift through tackles and push the pocket. Latu, man, he's 6'5", 260, but he's got elite bend capacity. I don't think people talk about that enough, but he's a very good finesse rusher with a deep bag of pass rush tools and hand usage components. So I think getting that technician with that bend and finesse opposite Sweat, that's a devastating combo to have in tandem with one another. So I like that a lot. Cam Kitchens is that rangy guy over top Jaquan Brisker. I think the playmaking ability is top tier within that center fielder range, is really appealing. There are occasional lapses in coverage, so you want to cut down on those, but he's got size, he's got range, he's got ball skills. I think all of those things are there, and he's pretty good in support too. So I love Kitchens and Brisker together. Jatavian Sanders is a fun one. I think he's a guy who you can kind of mix and match with this offensive personnel. When you have Washington on the field, put him in the slot. But when you want to go a little bit bigger, I think Jatavian Sanders has some big slot versatility too. You can scheme him touches on motions, but he's a very good seam threat, red zone threat as well. I think getting that size and athleticism in there is a big plus for a guy like Justin Fields, who has the arm talent to fit the ball into those windows. Audric Estime, one of my favorite backs in that day 2 range. I think Rashawn Johnson, Khalil Herbert, both solid pieces, but neither precludes you from taking a guy like Estime if he's there. The dude is a bowling ball, 5'11", 227. The contact balance, the forward pressing physicality, really efficient working the middle of the field between the tackles too. So I like that part of his game. Very explosive for his size. Washington, we talked about him earlier, that quintessential slot, very reliable guy. I would love to have him in that rotation. Christian Mahogany, again, a mauler who's got guard ability, but you could transfer him to center if you want to. I think it'll be a little bit of a learning curve while he's learning how to snap the ball consistently. But like Danny said, the natural leverage, the core strength, all of those things translate. And then Javon Solomon, real quick too, getting the first and second round pick next year is big, because if you're committing to Justin Fields, you want to adequately support him, right? If you're committing, you want to make that happen. I think those picks go a long way. But Javon Solomon, I think, if you're going to pick Javon Solomon, you got Andrew Billings, I believe, still. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong if he's a free agent. Yep. But, okay, like if you want to use some more odd fronts with him, mix up that personnel, I think Javon Solomon is probably more of a rush linebacker, right? So probably getting him on the field more in that 7-tech role where he's way out wide. He's, stand-up edge, but he's 6'1", around 250, so dense dude, and he's actually got almost 34-inch arms, so really good proportional length. That's kind of the profile that I want when I'm looking for those speed rushers. And I think if you're the Chicago, for me personally, if I would build a roster, I would always want to vary my personnel a little bit. So you got a finesse guy in Latu who's got really good hands. You got a power guy in Montez Sweat. Let's get that speed guy, make a Detroit comparison here. James Houston, the rookie last year who ended up getting 8 sacks, right? He's a pass rush specialist. You get him on the field, let him rush from space. That's what he does. I think Javon Solomon can be a kind of similar component. He's not going to be a great run defender on early downs, but get him in the 7-tech, wide 9 on pass rushing downs, and he's got the speed, bend, proportional length, and active hands and the hot motor to make the most of it. So overall, very good draft. I would give it an A. I think it's a solid draft from top to bottom.
All right, Danny, don't burst my bubble here. Give me an A too, please.
You start off by keeping Justin Fields right there. That's a winner for me because I'm Team Justin over here in Chicago. So, obviously Harrison Jr. we've talked about. We'll touch on later on my top 10. Latu is my top edge guy. The only question about him, and Ian, you mentioned it in terms of his ability to his arsenal to use his hands. And I haven't seen someone that in terms of technique wise that well advanced come out of college than maybe Joey Bosa, maybe Nick Bosa. One of the Bosa brothers. That's how good of a technician he is with his hands. And I just love the way. Doesn't have the length that Eberflus likes, sub 33-inch arm. So we'll see how that officially comes in at the senior at the combine. But love him. The only question about Latu is his medicals, right? Obviously, the kid was made to retire 2 years into Washington, took a year off, came back at UCLA, hasn't missed a beat, had 23 some sacks in the last couple of seasons. The kid is a beast off the edge. Cameron Kitchens, again, a guy that really, to me, popped at the Senior Bowl a couple of times, especially on team drills. Ball hawk, 11 interceptions the last 2 years, 15 passes defense, 3 forced fumbles. That's the kind of guy you put in there in the back half there with that front now with a Latu potentially and a Sweat and guys coming in the middle. I think he's going to opportunity to make some plays on the ball as well. Jatavian Sanders, he's the number 2 tight end in this class behind Brock Powers. And then again, you watch Texas tape, you see this guy being able to flex out in the slot, like Ian mentioned, and being a guy that can stretch that seam and nice natural hands catcher. You don't see him pressing the ball to his chest and using his body to caress to kind of reel in the catch. I need the rest of the list there, although you took it away from me. I forgot your
Sorry.
Estimate again, and like you mentioned, they're going to probably let Deontay Foreman go. He was that in between tackles runner, downhill guy. Estimate fills right in at 220, 225. A guy that can run between tackles and be that complement to whether it's to Khalil Herbert or the rookie from last year, Johnson. So, and then Malik Washington, we talked about him earlier. Mahogany, we talked about him. And Javon Solomon, again, a guy that doesn't fit the measurables that Eberflus likes, but with the 143 pick, you got a guy that came off of 16 sacks last year at Troy. He's got the 34-inch arm, so that might, pass the Eberflus test, if you will. But again, a guy that's stocky, he's got a big fill in terms of his body, his frame, small, 6'1", but he's compact, 246, 250 pounds. A guy that can get around the edge and he can convert speed to power, get after the quarterback. Again, just bringing in more pass rushers. So yeah, and then obviously you get the first and second pick from New England for next year. You got a second round pick this year or I think a third round pick this year from New England as well. I think this is an A+ draft. Although great job. I wish this is how the Bears work on April 25th.
Well, before I get you out of here, and thank you guys for those kind words. Get Xavier out of here. There were a couple of questions came your way, Ian. So before you get out of here, first of all, J2K says, please tell Ian that I added 3 prospects on his draft list through Oliver Hodgkinson that were left off: Marshawn Nealon, Christian Jones, and Jeremy Fless. Just doing what I can. LOL. Have no idea what he means by that, but I got a feeling that you do.
I don't exactly know, but I know Nealon is on our next top. I know our big board, our top 3 on the big board, we recently had an old revision. We updated it. It's a new revision now, so it got updated with the new valuations. Okay. So hopefully more players are in there for sure. But we got that done. We got that, and as the combine comes out and past the combine, we will be updating that again. So we'll be staying up to date on it. Nealon is my guy. I think I had him sneaking into I had him in the top 125 in the last update, which was a long time ago, but he's definitely going to be in my top 100 next time. He might be in my top 80. I'm a big fan of the power profile that's there. Christian Jones, probably more of a mid to late day 3 guy for me. I think the flexibility is kind of a concern for him, the recovery athleticism. But the dude is big. He's long. He's powerful. He's got grip strength too. And then Jeremy Flax from Kentucky is another big guy, right? He's around 330, 340. So you'd like to have that power with him too. He's probably a later round guy too. But 3 guys who will definitely be on the radar in that 200, 300 range.
John asked, do you think it's 9 is too early for Latu? I see him in a lot of other mocks go like in the mid-teens. He's dropped over the last 2 or 3 months. What are your thoughts?
I think if you want a guy who can come in and be a day one impact, a pass rusher, and a high level one at that, then it's not too early. And, you know, I'm an NFL draft analyst, so like I sit on the fence. I'm notorious for it. Like sometimes, like I gotta have more convictions than them. Like my board, he's a top 20 guy, so I don't think it's too high for him. Dallas Turner is slightly higher for me. I think the upside in the youth, the longer developmental track, because Latu is going to be 24, Turner is just 21, and he's got really, really good tools, right? So for me, it's just about developmental too. Who else is on the board? But if you're talking about pure talent, and if you want a high level pass rushing threat on day one, I don't think it's too early because I think he can get it done.
What do you think, Danny, on what Ian just said regarding Dallas over Latu?
I have flipped them around. I have Latu as my top edge rush, and not because of anything else. I just like the way, like I said earlier, his technique, his ability to get to the quarterback, because he's disruptive in the run game. Not as great in the run game, but he's a guy that can get after the quarterback and rush from the opposite of Montez. So I think he'd be a perfect complement. Dallas Turner for me, there's times that, you know, he's got the length, he's got the athletic ability, but I just didn't feel the impact that I saw with Latu on tape. And actually I have Turner third behind Jared Verse because I just like the power and the versatility that Jared Verse brings from Florida State. So, but for me, and to answer the question in terms of Latu being high at number 9, you know, you see him going in the middle of the first round because I think there's a lot of questions about his medicals. And I think this week coming up at the combine, it's going to be huge for him. I think if the team passes him with flying colors, I think he's a guy that you can go within that 9, 10, 11, 12 range, depending on, team needs and who trades up, who trades down, so on and so forth. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's not too high. I think he's one of the 3 premier edge rushers. He's right up there. And for me, he's number 1. For Ian, he's number 2. But I think that's in that range is perfect for him again. But all depends on those medicals.
Yeah.
Real quick, those top few edge guys are like clustered together very close to my board. I think it's a matter of what style you want. So if you want that high level pass rusher day one, you get Latu. If you want the upside play with the complete palette of tools, Dallas Turner. If you want the really, really good run defender with the speed to power element, it was a pretty good hand fighter too, Jared Verse. And if you want the alignment versatile wrecking ball, right, Chop Robinson maybe. So I think, it really depends on what your flavor is, but I think all of them are viable candidates.
Ian, you reported over at ProFootballNetwork.com that there's an agency that is asking its prospects, a talent agency that's asking its prospects to skip the S2 cognition test, which replaced the Wonderlic test. Can you tell our followers what the S2 cognition test is and how is it different from the Wonderlic, and why this agency wants the players not to take the test?
Yeah, so in short, and I won't pretend to know the full scope of it, but in short, the Wonderlic is more of a pure IQ test. The S2 is more of a football or heat of the moment action cognition test, like reaction speed, I don't know why I said speed. Reaction speed, but processing things quickly, right? Kind of, picking out information. So that kind of thing, IQ versus reaction in the heat of the moment. Why they're choosing to skip it. Just seeing what happened with CJ Stroud last year. I mean, the scores got leaked, and there were rumors that they weren't the correct scores to begin with, right? So you're seeing, though every data point is valuable in the draft process, but once information is out there and it's accessible for people, it can be weaponized and used to misinform, right? So that's kind of where it comes for these guys. And CJ Stroud, it was such a big thing because he was my QB1. I know he was a lot of other people's QB1. It was a little subjective at the top of the board, but it could have caused him to slip a little bit if people gave him more credence. Now, luckily the Texans were there, like, hey, the tape says this guy's a good processor, so we're not going to let a number sway us. But seeing how it was used to misinform and work against a prospect, the agency will look at that and say, I don't want my guy to go through the same thing. So I think that's kind of what it's about, trying to protect them and preserve them from that. But it's a tough decision too, because NFL teams do use that as part of the puzzle, right? It's not a definitive piece, but every little bit counts again. So it's one more bit of information that maybe won't be available, but that's why it's happening.
That's 100% accurate. It's because of the whole CJ Stroud thing, and nothing. I don't know anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Cassero, who came from New England with Bill Belichick, leaked that information out about CJ Stroud to make sure Carolina didn't take him. Well, hopefully try and sway Carolina to take him so he can be there number 2. I want to be put it past Nick Cassero to do that.
See, this is the movie Hollywood should have made about the NFL draft instead of that stupid Kevin Costner movie with the implausible trades. You guys can't tell me that you like Draft Day, the movie, because if you guys are true draft nicks, draft analysts, then you know that was totally implausible. Kevin Costner, the day of the draft, trading up to get a quarterback he hasn't even scouted. So I found that hilarious. But that's the movie that should be made. All the espionage behind the scenes of the NFL draft. But the NFL, of course, would never loan their brand to a movie like that. Anyways, Ian, it's been great having you on as a guest. I've wanted to do this for a while now. Thank you for accepting and being so generous with your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking about it. I think the Bears have a good offseason ahead. We'll see what they do, some choices to make. We'll get some clarity in the near future. So until next time, I enjoyed it.
Hey, and by the way, tell us about the website, what you're writing, and how and why people should go over there for the mock draft. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. It's we've had a lot of momentum this offseason. We're getting more. We're going to be at the NFL Combine, covering it in person next week, so that'll be fun. I'm excited. It's my first time going personally, so I am looking forward to it. But we've got more scouting reports. Thank you, Jordan. We got more scouting reports coming out. We're rewriting some. We're updating constantly, and so that's a fun bit of the process, locking in the grades and the rankings and the big boards. So everything will flow from the scouting and the scouting reports, and we'll do big boards, positional rankings, the top 100 and top 300, and then the MDS. We've got the MDS. We've updated the team needs actually just this past week, so that'll help with simulations. But we've got some new interface things too. We're updating the scouting reports within the MDS fairly soon, so that's something to look forward to, so you can have a little bit more knowledge at your fingertips as you're going through the picks. A lot of fun things on the horizon, and we got a 2-month window to make it all happen. So it's going to be a fun time for sure.
Love it. We'll promote it continually here on the Barroom Network, and really appreciate your time, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Take care. That is Ian Cummings, Pro Football Network. Great job, Danny. Good talk. He gave us a lot of names. This is going to be one of those shows I'll probably watch 2 or 3 times and try to scribble my notes a little faster. Listen, before we get to your top 10 wide receiver list, what did you, and we're going to talk about Eddie Jackson later, but what did you think about the release of Cody Whitehair? A lot of people thought that the writing was on the wall. This is not a surprise, but I want to make sure to get your thoughts on Cody.
Yeah, I think neither player being released was a surprise to me. I'm not sure why everyone's maybe taken aback by Eddie Jackson. I mean, he was scheduled to make $14 million a year. Obviously, we've seen the play in Eddie Jackson. He had a bit of a bounce back year last year, but again, the inconsistencies in terms of tackling and some of the injuries that kind of caught up with him. It's unfortunate because the guy was never the same after that 2018 season in which he had a all pro year and then ended up getting that big contract, just whatever reason, whether it's inconsistent play, it's the injuries, it was never the same, and he was never the same. And wish him best of luck. And I just for me it was just fait accompli. There was no way either one of those players I saw coming back. Maybe you can make a case for Eddie Jackson because of the young secondary and because of that leadership role he took last year with that team. But at $14 million, I think if he wasn't going to renegotiate that contract, there was no way he was going to come back. So I think now they clear $21 million or something like that in terms of salary cap space. So heading into free agency now with roughly, if you take away what they have to allocate for their draft class, 2 top 10 picks, they're going to have roughly around 57 million available to go ahead and spend the free agency. So just more room to marry. I think that won't be the last player that's going to get cut. I think there's some other players, fringe players on the roster that also could be released. We'll see how much money they actually go into free agency with. But yeah, no surprise whatsoever.
All right, let's get to Danny Shimon's top 10 wide receivers for the 2024 NFL draft. Yeah. And I got to tell you, your number one pick is to me is a little bit of a surprise because I thought you were going to side with Greg, and not because Greg is Greg, but just because of the way Greg sees it in that Malik Neighbors is the number one overall receiver. But you have basically the prominent thought on this is that Marvin Harrison is the guy, huh?
Yeah, so I'm some context here, and I'm going into this draft process, into free agency. The Bears only have two receivers really that are on this roster that are, in my opinion, are locked to be here, and that's Tyler Scott, the 4th round pick from last year, and obviously DJ Moore. I mean, Velus Jones is coming back. He's going to be in camp, but I don't think he's going to make the roster. Obviously, that some Webster's on the practice squad. There are other players there as well. So for me, I think they go in here in this offseason. They need 3, possibly 4 receivers. And I'm thinking they go 2 in the draft and possibly 2 in free agency. And we touched on, Aldo, you and I were talking, pre-show in terms of, I don't want big money free agent receivers. I want tier 2, tier 3 guys that can come in, maybe be on number 3, maybe be, a challenge for number 2. But I fully expect that number 2 receiver to be opposite of DJ Moore to be one of these top 3 guys that we're going to discuss here real quick. But if it happens so that these guys go off the board, or the Bears get an offer for number 9 where a team wants a quarterback and they trade down, there are other guys in this top 10 that you could possibly get later on this first round, or even if you get a second round pick, guys that are going to be available at second. So this is where my top 10 was specifically Bears focused and for what they need. In my opinion, their biggest need at receiver is going to be an X, a big X opposite of DJ Moore, who plays the Z, and also maybe a slot guy. That's why your Malik Washington guy in that mock draft fits what I was looking at there as well. But the X, the big receiver, is what I was looking at. And when we go through my list, you'll see predominantly a lot of my guys are bigger guys. My top guy is Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously a consensus All-American the last 2 seasons, the Blitnikoff Award winner this past year. With Junior, you talk about his physical appearance and his ability, in terms of making plays at the football field. But, he was targeted on 36.4% of his routes. And he only had 7 drops the last 2 seasons. So he's got ball security. Talk about size at 6'3", 6'4". The ability to the long arms, the big catch radius. You see, this is a guy that could beat press coverage at the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that can go ahead and make plays on those contested balls thrown up in the air, 50-50 jump balls. Does a great job in terms of tracking the ball over his shoulder. Again, good hands, being able to bring it up. To me, this is and if it goes the way your mock goes, Aldo, that's going to be one heck of an offense you built there with DJ Moore on one side, Marvin Harrison Jr. on one side, and then you have Justin Fields potentially in the backfield, the quarterback, and now you bring in some other players, whether it's tight end or slot receivers. That's where you start building that offense and weapons. I think he is going to be the number 1 receiver, in my opinion, going off the board. A lot of teams I know have him as a best player in the draft, no matter what position you talk about.
All right. At number 2, this is a guy that Greg has been raving about for months now, and I've seen him play a number of times because I love the lefty quarterback, Michael Penix. Rome Odunze is a excellent X choice.
Right. Rome Odunze, the prototypical X. This is a guy that led the nation receiving this past year with over 1,640 yards. He's a guy that had 19 contested catches this past year, converting 95% of those opportunities. Another guy that doesn't drop the ball, only 3 drops this past season. He's a guy, with that size, the length. He's a guy that is a tough physical receiver, a true X, if you will. All right. He's a guy that's got terrific body control. He'll be able to contour his body's frame to be able to adjust. And again, long arms, big catch radius, can extend outside his frame and pluck the ball out of the air. Nice, natural, soft hands. Tough, can catch through contact. This is one of the receivers that to me is, in terms of physical receivers, a guy that can go up there. You talk about back shoulder throws. This guy can make it. Talk about throwing up there. He's got a corner in his hip pocket. He can go up and catch the ball on top of his head. A guy that safety bearing down on him, comes over his back. He can catch through contact. This is a guy that does all those things that you want. And I think he'd be a sensational complement to a DJ Moore on the opposite side. And the other thing is this guy is very good in terms of as a blocker as well. He's a hard-nosed blocker. You know, we see a lot of these, you know, these receivers kind of just whiff or just kind of give a courtesy attempt at trying to block. But no, Odunze will get in there. He'll extend his arms. He'll get a good base there, and he'll lock out, and he'll block for his running backs and his his counter, his receivers down the field as well. So Odunze, I just fear now that with at number 9, that might be too low for him to drop down to the Bears. He is flying up a lot of teams' draft boards, so he might not be available there.
What do you think about what Jay Sanders is asking? He says, "Why Harrison over Odunze?"
For me, Harrison gives you a little bit more in terms of explosiveness, right? He's a guy that gets downfield, he's got a little bit more speed. I think Odunze is going to run anywhere between a 4.55, 4.7. It's in that range, maybe a 4.54. I think Harrison can run a high 4.4. So I think he gives you some of that production as well. But I mean, it's very close. Jay Sanders is very close. It's if the Bears happen to trade down and they miss on MJH and you get Odunze, fine, because I think both guys would be perfect complements for DJ Moore. So, it's very close with those two guys.
Do you like Nomad's comp here, Odunze and Justin Jefferson?
Actually, Nomad, I kind of compare him to an Allen Robinson, kind of Davante Adams. That's who I'm looking at him. In terms of, he's got to fill a little bit more. It's got to be a little bit more, a little bulk to him. But I'm talking a guy that can be a guy that can get downfield again, make those contested catches, and then eventually, as he progresses in his career, become that route runner that Davante Adams is. So I think that's more of my comp for him. I think Justin Jefferson gives you a little bit more speed than Odunze, but in terms of size, ability to go up and make plays on the football, they both have that. But I just think Jefferson gives you a little bit more speed down the field.
Very good. All right, let's look at number 3, and here he is finally, Malik Neighbors from LSU.
And someone asked why he's number 3, and again, I'm just going based off of what fits the Bears. And I think this kid, Malik Neighbors, first of all, he is a guy that creates separation. He is a quick twitch athlete. Him off the line of scrimmage is not funny for defensive backs. He can get cut, get out, with quick feet, quick twitch, good body control. He can explode off the line of scrimmage, get on that seam route, and get deep, and a corner has no idea what happened. So his ability to create separation is probably the best in this class here. But the reason he's number 3, again, he's more of a Z for me. He's a guy that could play a Z and a slot, not a real true X, right? And then the other thing for me that kind of knocked him down is he doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, in catching through contact. And he's a guy that, in terms of contested catches, he's not really up there. I think he only had like 10 contested catches last year, but he's a guy more that gets open, creates separation, and you can hit him. You hit him on a certain slant or a certain route. This kid has the home run ability to take it all the way. So big play potential, average 17.6 yards a reception, 14 touchdowns last year. Again, consensus All-American, led the SEC in receptions with 72 in back-to-back years in 2022 and 2023. Again, big play potential, creates that separation. But for me, the only thing that kind of knocks him is he's not a true X, and he's a guy that really has struggles in from what I've seen, catching through contact. So physicality does bother him, again, early on in his career. But no doubt, talented athlete, special kid, and again, creates separation almost instantly off the line of scrimmage.
Nomad comps him to DJ Moore, and Jordan. What the hell did Jordan comp him to? Brendan Ayuk. So
yeah, I can see the Brendan Ayuk, the explosive speed, the ability to get downfield, the ability to create separation. But again, not a guy that you're going to see going up and getting contested, catches in between two defenders. So, and that's where I see Malik Neighbors is as well. So that's the thing is like, but just because he's not an X, you don't pass up a talent if he's there if you're the Bears, right? Because you can always get X if you're looking for an X. You can get one in a second or third round, because there's going to be guys in that second, third round range that we might cover here that could be available and could be a true X for you. So, but again, you don't if the top 2 guys in Marvin Harrison Jr. or Donzie are gone, and Neighbors is sitting there, I would not pass him up because of the explosive ability he gives you, opposite of DJ Moore. Doesn't fit that X need. But also, again, you can fill that need, whether it's free agency as a veteran, or you can go get another white guy later on in this draft.
All right, let's look at number 4. I've already seen his name up in the chat a number of times, and it's, of course, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU.
Yeah, you watch these two LSU receivers, and no wonder Jane Daniels won the Heisman Trophy. I mean, this guy, talk about a terrific combination of size, speed, and just length. He's got long arms, arms like tree trunks they call them, and possesses that quick feet, the athletic twitch, creates separation on go routes with his long strides and his speed. Can sink his hips and separate on those quick hitting, whip routes or hitch routes or comebacks. Soft hands, big catch radius, can extend and go, outside his frame, reel in the catch. Again, I love guys with soft hands. Doesn't have to use his body to corral the catch. Big play potential every time this kid has the ball in his hands. And again, he's a guy that's going to come in about 6'3", 6'4" with deep speed. And he's a guy, again, big play potential. Another guy that doesn't, shy away from contact in terms of when it comes to blocking. So I think that's why Brian Thomas Jr. is up there. And he was overshadowed from most of his season because of Malik Neighbors. But again, another guy that's got that big play potential. Averaged, 17.3 yards a catch, 17 touchdowns. 153.8% of his contested catches as well. So a guy that uses that body, uses that frame, uses that big catch radius to go up and make plays on the ball down the football field, but also has what I think is going to probably run a high 4.4 at the combine next week.
Where would you put him on your draft list in terms of how high would you pick him? Would you pick him at 9?
So if you're sitting at 9, and I think 9 might be a little bit too high. I think he's more in that 12 to 15, 17 range. Okay. I think that's where, just because he hasn't really done it for multiple seasons. He really had just one great year last year. The previous year only had 361 yards, 31 receptions. So this is the one big year he had. So I want to see him kind of do it, multiple times for me to go and say, all right, this is a top 10 player. But just based off of athletic ability, the combination of size, speed, and athleticism, I think he's a top 15 player for sure.
Excellent. Now, this next guy, maybe you can solve this controversy that was going on in the chat room a few shows ago. Ian Cummings, how fast is this guy?
Well, that's the thing, is like on tape, he looks like he could be anywhere from a high 4.4 to a low 4.5 guy, right? Okay. But again, a physical specimen. This is a guy that transferred from Michigan State, to Florida State, and started 12 games, or I'm sorry, played 22 games in Michigan State, started 12 games, was an All Big Ten member in 2022. And went to Florida State this past year. And just to me, if he had a quarterback throughout the season, I think his number would be better. He finished with 658 yards, 13.2 yard, average with 11 touchdowns. But again, you're talking about, if you want someone coming off the bus looking like a prototypical X receiver, this kid is it. Physical, chiseled physique. He's a guy that's got the height at 6'3", 6'4". Remember, Shane Waldron is the offensive coordinator now. He came from Seattle. He had a physical freak, a DK Metcalf as his ex. This is, he might not be as fast as DK Metcalf. He might not be as filled on the upper body as DK Metcalf, but he's definitely a guy that has that big play potential. Put on that Clemson tape, you see that his ability to go down and make plays on the football. Again, another guy that can go up and make contested catches, making plucking the ball away from defenders over their heads, basically. Put on the LSU game, you saw him catch a slant, break a tackle, and then take it to the house. He's got that speed to run away from defenders, right? He's a guy that, with his size and his length, can also break tackles after the catch and give you some of that yak you're looking for. So again, another nice comp. Now, he might not be as route polish or as some of the other receivers in terms of his route running. He's still got to be coached up there, but the physical tools are there. Again, the combination of size, speed, athletic ability, jumping ability, the ability to make contested catches down the field, and again, break away from defenders, run away from defenders. Ian Cummings has it. I've been high on this kid since week one of coming into the season. And I think this is a kid that just going to get better and better. Again, route running is not there yet. He's got to get better there, but he coaches this kid up. His potential is through the roof, basically.
Top 20 pick as Notorious TBG?
That's a good question, because I think it all depends on what he runs. A lot of teams have the same question that you were talking about in the chat. What is he? Is he a 4.6 guy? Because there's times where you just don't see him kind of explode off the line of scrimmage, and he's I don't want to say half-assing it, but it doesn't look like he's going at maximum speed, and he looks like he's not running at maximum speed. And then the other time where you see him break a tackle, and now he's hitting down the field and he's running away from fast defenders in Clemson secondary, or LSU secondary. You see that speed. So, if he runs a 4.4, I think he goes in the bottom half of the first round. And again, not not all of it is dependent on the 40 time, but because on his tape, you see some elements of a guy that can run a 4.4, but you also see sometimes like he can run like a 4.5 or 4.6. And so you want to know where he's at. But again, he's a guy I've heard like late first round, teams on those playoff teams on the bottom there could look for a guy that they can come in and nurture. Again, not a finished product in terms of route running. You need some coaching there, but that physical skill set is all there. And if he had put it all together in terms of route running and maybe play with a more consistent quarterback, I think he could be, top 20 for sure.
The next guy on your list is the most intriguing guy because of his height and his speed. In fact, this guy, I messed up. This is the guy that was some discussion in the chat room about how fast he is. Some people are saying 4.25. Some people are saying 4.35. But number 6 is Xavier Legette from South Carolina.
Yeah, this is a guy really, I put on his tape and he really hadn't been – he was kind of nondescript in terms of his college career. 3-year starter. Started 32 of 53 games he's played in. Has 113 career receptions, 15th all time on the school list. Averaged 26.4 yards per kickoff return, so he's got some kickoff ability. But really broke off this last year, and was a second team All SEC member, and had over 1,200 yards, 17.7 yards average, and 7 touchdowns. And again, talk about a guy with hands. Only had 2 drops the entire season. He's a guy that physicality, he gives you that at 6 feet, 215 pounds. Now you're talking about 4.2. He's not a 4.2 guy. In my opinion, he's not a 4.2 guy. He's a guy that if he touches 4.4, maybe 4.5 is probably his range again. But physical guy that can line up on the X, can beat press coverage. I like the fact that at South Carolina, they use him at multiple positions. You see him lined up as a Z, as the X, in the slot, even in the backfield. And that versatility, shows you that he's a guy that can be positioned everywhere or anywhere on the offense. So I think that's what you like about him. Went to the Senior Bowl, had a couple of drops early on in the week, but then turned it on, and you saw some of that competitive toughness, that football competitiveness, if you will, in him, and he kind of turned on the rest of the week, and you saw him kind of put up, and by the time the week was up, whoever his agents or whoever told him, hey man, you're good. You don't have to practice, you don't have to play anymore. So he called it in, So I think he's a guy that, again, physically he's got that ability, he's got the hands. Again, only 2 drop passes his entire past season. A guy that can catch through contact, a guy that can get downfield as well. But he's not a 4.2 guy if that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay. The comment here from where was it? Darn it. Notorious. It's a great question. Do we know what type of wide receiver Shane Waldron and the wide receiver coach Chris Beatty, that the profile of the wide receivers, is it the same that we had under Getsy? Do you want the big X? You want the DJ Moore type at the other wideout spot? What are the profiles for this Shane Waldron offense?
So we just got to go from where he came from, right? So Getsy came from obviously LaFleur, but I think Getsy just ran a system. I don't think Getsy really incorporated or put the system in together, right? And so I think what Getsy wanted, obviously he wanted guys that can block, and that's why Equanimeous St. Brown was on this roster. He brought him from Green Bay. So, but he wants guys in terms of Shane Waldron. If you go back to what McVay does, who he learned under, he's got the Z with Cooper Kupp. He's got the big X, whether it's Ben Skoranek or he had Van Jefferson out there. He's got the little guy with Tutu Atwell. He's got Puka Nacua now, another guy that can be interchangeable between the slot and the Z and so on and so forth. So you want guys that are interchangeable, but you do need a big guy. You need a big X receiver. And I think the Bears didn't have a big X receiver unless you count, Equanimeous St. Brown as an X receiver, which I don't think he's a really good X receiver. But anyway, so they didn't have that big guy on the outside. So I think you do need that. Now, you're not, again, if you see a guy sitting at you with talent like a Neighbors, for example, who's not an X, not a traditional X, or maybe even like Xavier Legette, who could play X, but might be better as a Z or even in the slot. You can't pass those guys up because you can always maybe get one in free agency. You can also get one in later on in the draft. So, but for me, he wants a big guy on the X on the outside. He wants a Z, which he has a Z in terms of DJ Moore. You want a slippery, quick slot guy. You could get one in this draft. You could get one in free agency. There's talk about maybe Tyler Lockett being a free, a cap casualty in Seattle. That could be a guy who's familiar with the system, could be a slot guy here in Chicago. Who knows? We'll see. But, if what you have right now, if you think maybe like the kid from Cincinnati, the fourth round pick, Tyler Lockett would be, your guy there. I'm sorry, Tyler Scott would be your guy in the slot there. So, we'll see how that goes. But you want a big guy in the X, you want a Z, and you want a slot, and then you also want a guy that's interchangeable, players that can play multiple slots in terms of the receiver position. So, but you got to have that big guy, in my opinion.
Very good. Number 7 on your list is a guy whose last name we know well because he's a Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest receiver of all time. His son, Brendan Rice, out of USC.
Yeah, I've been talking about Brendan Rice since the beginning of the Senior Bowl, and I wanted him to kind of go out there and show me something at the Senior Bowl, and he did. And because when you put on Caleb Williams tapes, and all you see is Brendan Rice making plays downfield, beating corners who are in their hip pocket. You see that extra burst, extra speed to go ahead and get that over the top leverage. And again, you talked about his pedigree. Father's Jerry Rice, and he's a guy that played at Colorado initially, then transferred over to USC. He's a highly decorated prep star out of Arizona. Played basketball, also ran track. It had a 10.78 time in 100 meters, right? So again, this is a guy that gives you a big body at 6'2", 200 pounds, and also soft hands. A guy that can utilize his size and be able to either get in on those in cutting routes, extend out away from his frame, make those catches. But also, what I wanted to see a little bit more dog in him, right? And I want to see him just kind of go out there and say, you know what, this is me. I'm that guy. I'm him. And in the Senior Bowl, I saw that. I saw corners coming up and talking trash to him, and he went out and one-on-one would score on them and come right back and jaw at them. So I wanted to see that out of Brendan Rice. And then again, the tape tells it all. You put on his tape and you watch Caleb Williams going to him all the time. You see him. I like the fact that when he sees his quarterback in trouble, he'll come back to the quarterback, make himself available. Does a good job of finding that hole in the zone defense, sitting down, and again being a nice target for his quarterback to get to. So he's not going to be high on a lot of other evaluators list. But because of the fact that I like the tenacity, the dog he showed over at the Senior Bowl, I like the ability to get deep. You see him, again, I talked about earlier, there's a corner in his hip pocket, and you see he's got that extra gear to kind of put it in that second gear, and then it gets over the top leverage, and he makes plays down the football field. Again, nice job of looking the ball in over his shoulder. So I got give you that big play potential along with that size. I think this is a guy that just kept getting better and better and better throughout the process. Now, speed is another thing with him. We talked about he's got a track background. If he goes out there and runs a 4.6, that's really going to hurt him. But I think what he did at the Senior Bowl is, and the other thing that hurts him is he doesn't create much separation. He's not a guy that, like a Malik Neighbors, that's got that quick twitch and is going to, beat 3, 4, 5 yards open because of just his natural athletic ability. He's more of a guy, again, catches through contact, uses that deep speed to beat the corner down the field. And again, a nice awareness and be able to sit in zones, find openings, and be available for your quarterback. I think that's where he sticks out for me. And if you're going to draft Caleb Williams, might as well bring one of his top receivers here. I'll make him comfortable too. So I think that's a nice way to kind of ingrain both of them here in Chicago. But that's not the reason why he's not in my top 10. I just like his skill set. I love the pedigree. I love the way he's gone better, in my opinion, from his USC tape to the Senior Bowl. And hopefully now he continues that at the combine and goes on forward.
Muck says that Rice, his route running is a little sloppy. That's what he's detected. Have you seen that, or could that be perhaps because there's so much improvisation by these wide receivers with Caleb running all over the place?
No, I don't think it's sloppy. I just think he's not a guy that creates much separation. So you might not see him create openings and be wide open as some of the other receivers you'll see here. But I don't think he's a sloppy route runner. I just think he doesn't create much separation. He utilizes more of that 6'2", 200 body frame, the long reach, the wingspan, and again that deep speed, that track background to be able to go deep and get a guy, even though the corner's in his hip pocket, have that gear to get past him and make a play down the football field.
Very good. All right. A lot of people have been mentioning this person's name in the chat, and Danny has him at number 8, Adonai Mitchell.
Yeah, Adonai Mitchell. I mean, these Texas guys are some heck of athletes, right? And then Adonai Mitchell is another guy that's a physical receiver, 6'3", 190 pounds. was overshadowed a little bit by Xavier Worthy, who's we're going to talk about next. But again, a guy that started his collegiate career at Georgia, played 21 games, 15 starts, so a big SEC conference, 38 receptions, 560 yards and 7 touchdowns at Georgia, transferred to Texas the spring of 2023. Played just 1 year at Texas. But again, he's a guy that's physical. He's a guy that likes to go up and get the football. He's got I'm curious to see what he jumps in terms of his vertical, right? He comes in at 6'3", 190. I think he could be in that 40-inch vertical range, the way he goes up and he attacks the football. And I love the aggression with him. Terrific hands. Only one drop pass the entire season. So he's a guy that's a reliable, a guy that can go across the middle, has no fear, tough competitor. He's emotional. He's fearless. And again, the guy that brings that attitude, brings that dog mentality. Again, you like the size. I like the twitchy athletic ability he shows and when he's out there. Quickness, along with good build-up speed to get open. Can track and reel the ball in over his shoulders, can make those catches, can go out and again, make contested catches when he's pretty much covered. Tough competitor, will go over the middle again with no fear whatsoever. And again, a tough blocker, a guy that can go out there on the edge and give you some blocking to set up your running backs in terms of, stealing off that edge, or even, giving if it's a screen play or something like that, giving the receiver that gets the ball an opportunity to get upfield because out there he's blocking. Again, only one drop pass last year, good hands. And again, this is a guy that athletically, with that combination of athletic ability, hands, and again, just that ferocity, that competitive nature, I think he's the guy that a lot of teams are high on.
Very good. Good report on Donnie Mitchell. A lot of people talking about Xavier Worthy, your number 9 pick.
So Texas receiver. This is a guy that is not a X receiver, right? He's more of that fast twitch, speed guy. 6 feet, 155. He is slim. He is thin. He's got to add weight. So he's not a guy that I would put on the outside. He probably won't be able to get off of press coverage. But what he gives you that big play potential, right? He's a guy that has 40 career punt returns for 564 yards, 14.1 average, and a touchdown. So it gives you some of that ability in terms of as a returner. Now, a lot of times at Texas, they got the ball in his hands on jet sweeps, on little quick hitting screens. Again, you want to take advantage of his ability to make you miss in the open field, take advantage of some of that punt return ability he's got. But what this guy has, and you can't deny it, is big play potential in terms of his speed. And a guy, his hands are a little bit shaky here and there. You see a couple of concentration drops, but I think that's something that we can work with. You can coach up and get out of him. But in terms of big play potential, predominantly out of the slot, could also potentially develop into a nice Z option as well down the line. But I think this is a guy in the slot that you give you that speed, that big play element that the Bears don't currently have on offense.
Nomad said that Worthy will turn off a light switch and be in bed before it gets dark. Good stuff. All right, and then number 10, I was a little surprised to see this guy in your top 10 list from Washington, Jalen Polk.
Yep, another guys just like Brendan Rice. A lot of guys won't be talking about this guy, but I was watching the Rome Aduze tape, and this number 2 kid just making plays. Whether it's diving, for a ball, or whether it's just getting out and just being aggressive with the football in his hands. And a 6'1", 190. He's a redshirt sophomore. This is his 4th season. Was overshadowed obviously by some of his teammates on offense. But had over, had 69 receptions, 1,159 yards, averaged almost 17 yards of reception, and had 9 touchdowns, right? This is a guy that you put on his tape, and you cannot help but keep your eyes on him. He brings what I call that dog mentality. This is a guy that if the ball's in his area code, he's going to go up and get it, right? He's a guy that's got long arms. Again, a guy that'll dive in the middle of the football field, extend, doesn't care about, if there's a safety bearing down on him, doesn't care about anything else. He will go after that football and he'll make the catch. And he's got quickness. He's explosive off the line of scrimmage. The only thing about him is his route running is atrocious. He's a guy that needs to get coached up in terms of being a competent NFL route runner. But, other than that, he's a guy that, got competitive nature in him, that football toughness in him. Again, the guy that can go across the middle, has no fear, and is just an emotional leader. And like I said, he's got that dog mentality. And, he's a dude, like we call him scouting, a guy that will, rally, his teammates will rally around him. And he's a guy that can, if offense is stalling, and he'll make a big play and a first down. And next thing you know, gets the hype, the crowd hyped up, gets his teammates hyped up. He's just that type of player. And again, the way he's got explosive ability to be able to get over the top leverage, reels in the ball nicely over his shoulders. A big catch radius. It's got the long arms, soft hands, can pluck it out of the air as well. The more I watch him, there's no way I could say I could leave this guy off my top 10, because he is a guy that watched a couple years down the line. Everybody's going to be like, Jalen Polk, how did his kid end up, round 2, round 3? He's going to be somewhere in that range. But if he goes out there and he blazes a 4.4 at the combine, I think that just is going to keep going up higher and higher. But keep an eye on Jalen Polk from Washington. I was watching Odozie, but this kid just kept popping on tape for me. And I'm like, this kid is a player. He's got that dog mentality. Again, needs to be refined in terms of his route running. But man, that natural talent, that competitive toughness, that want to in terms of, going after the football, toughness. Again, another guy will get in there and get his nose dirty and block. I love that kid.
Gotta love it. Great list, and there are probably another 10, 15 wide receivers that we could talk about.
It was hard for me because I was supposed to get this list here in the morning, and I'm like, man, who do I leave off? I mean, there's Ricky Pearsall from Florida, who I like a lot. There's Troy Franklin from Oregon, I like a lot. Tez Walker from North Carolina, a guy that was, had some drops at the Senior Bowl, but he's got another guy that's got that size and length to be able to get down the football field. Roman Wilson, the slot receiver from Michigan. Lat McConkey, who was the talk of the Senior Bowl in terms of his ability to get open in the slot. That guy that's got solid size and good hands. There's a ton of receivers. Taj Washington is a guy that day 3 is going to be. I love another SC receiver. A smaller, shorter guy, but again, guy plays hard. Bigger than his size, has that competitive toughness. Those are guys that you're going to get in the later rounds. So I'm saying like this draft is a good draft for the Bears to go ahead and fill. Like I said, at least 2 probably slots on the receiving core from this draft, and then probably go and complement that with 1 or 2 veteran free agents as well.
Cat wants to know, Worthy and Coleman are the only 2 punt returners. Who else you think could do it in the NFL from those names that you just mentioned?
Well, Leggett has got kickoff return ability. He hasn't had much in terms of punt return ability, but I mean, you can find guys. We talk about Malik Washington. The guy you mentioned in your mock. He's a guy that can have some return ability as well. Taj Washington was returning some punts at the East West Shrine game as well. So there's going to be guys that you can get later on if you wanted to bring him in just for specific for special teams purposes.
Jay Sanders is asking for you to remind him how you ranked Tyler Scott a year ago.
Yeah, Tyler Scott for me was a 5th-round pick last year. He was a guy that brought you that big play element, a guy from the slot, give you that speed. A little bit disappointing season, in my opinion. I thought he was going to have a better impact or bigger impact. Hopefully, a year, with the new coaching staff, with Chris Beatty now, kind of, hopefully better than what they had here previously. He gets that second year. We see that usually we see those jumps from rookies from first year to second year. Hopefully, he takes that jump. And again, right now he's going to be counted upon to be one of the 3 receivers. So unless they go ahead and make these draft picks or bring in veteran free agents.
And Velas his career with the Bears is over, right?
In my opinion, it's been over since about a year and a half now. I mean, the guy can't return punts, he can't return kickoffs. He's not trusted as a route runner. I mean, he does a good job on jet sweeps and as a running back sometimes, but I mean that's not enough to waste a 3rd-round pick on him and even keep a roster spot.
Yeah. All right. Danny talked earlier about the release of Eddie Jackson. And so one of the things I wanted to look at was the list of the top 10 or so free agent safeties so we could comment a little bit about them and then maybe talk about philosophy, because Danny and Jordan should be on here to debate this with you. Danny is not high on drafting safeties early in, like, probably not until day 3. Is that fair to say, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, depending on where you're at in terms of how many draft picks you have and all that stuff. But for me, it's always starts up front. If your defensive line is not good and your front 7 is not good, you can have all pro safeties back there. It doesn't make a difference, right? And then I think the big debate goes back to when Jaquan Brisker was picked in the 2nd round. I think he's been a good player, but has he been special? Has he been done anything that's made you say, all right, the Bears defense rotates around Jaquan Brisker? I mean, up until they got Montez Sweat, that defense sucked, right? So what happened? They got Montez Sweat up front, a guy that can get pressure at the quarterback. that made the other interior guys get better. They made the linebackers get better because of one defensive guy like up front. So Jaquan Brisker didn't make any impact on that defensive line. It was, or on that defense as a whole, it was the guys up front. And again, for me, Brisker still takes bad angles on some run plays in terms of, guys that third year still, not really that great in terms of his ability to secure tackles, make some plays here and there. I think he's got more dropped interceptions than he actually has interceptions. So he doesn't take the ball away. If he makes a big play, makes a great hit, he's down on the ground for a couple, missed a couple plays. So again, that pick, while some might celebrate as a good player, he's not an impact player for me, right? He's just not a guy that, and so that's why for me, safeties are the last of my concerns, right? If my front seven are good, they get pressure on the quarterback. If my corners are good, my safeties, they have to be athletic and smart and be able to be in the right place and the right time and sure tacklers. That's what I'm looking for.
Jordan says, Danny, the coverage sets the rush plan. It's not the other way around.
If you guys are not getting to the quarterback, I don't care who's back there covering. You're not gonna, whatever the rush plan is. If it does not, if the guys cannot get to the quarterback, that opposite quarterback is gonna have time and he's gonna throw. And we saw it. This defense was nothing until Montez Sweat came onto the front here.
My feeling about the safety position is that it is more important than ever in the history of the NFL. You're asking safeties now to play the free safety position, to play in the box, to guard the slot receiver, to play linebacker. You're asking safeties now to do more than ever before. So you need a smart player back there. You need a physical guy back there. You need a guy who has presence back there that the defense fears. He will help make the pass rush better, just like the pass rush will help the defensive backs be better. So to me, it's a no-brainer. Defensive backs in today's NFL are gold. You can't get enough of them. Corners and safeties, because safeties in many schemes, they're asked to go one-on-one with a wide receiver. And that flexibility, DCs love that flexibility.
Who are the safeties on the 49ers? Can you name them?
Well,
one of them was the guy that Bears cut, Tashawn Gibson. The other guy was, I don't know who, because Tuafonga, who was a 4th-round pick, by the way, was out on IR. Who were the safeties on the Chiefs, who were the second best defense and won the Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Edwards was a 3rd-round pick, and it was cut by the Bucs. And I can't remember. I can't remember the other safety on the Chiefs.
I see that's a straw man's argument. That anytime people bring that up, well, who was on the Super Bowl champion or the conference championships? Maybe if they had a better safety, a more memorable safety, they would have won the Super Bowl. So, I don't think you can use that argument. I can throw you names of great safeties who have made huge differences on their team. Just because some teams that win don't have a great safety doesn't negate the argument that they are more needed than ever before. But we could talk about this for days, and maybe when Jordan comes on the show, you two guys should debate it, because it'll be much more interesting coming from him than my ugly mouth. Let's take a look at the free agent safeties. The first two guys, that's the wrong list. The first two guys are probably going to get franchise tagged, according to reports that I've read. And that's Antoine Winfield Jr., who I love with the Tampa Bay Bucks. This guy was forcing fumbles, creating interceptions, guarding guys one-on-one. Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Bucks and who runs that defense, had him blitzing, was just using him as a jack of all trades. Unfortunately, because the franchise tag for safeties is lower than, paying for a top safety, it's kind of a no-brainer that he will not be available. And the same could be said for Xavier McKinney. Now, as you get down this list, we start talking about guys who could likely be available. Geno Stone with the Ravens. What are your thoughts about him?
Yeah, Geno Stone came out of Iowa. Hard-nosed player, was primarily a special teams guy, and then last year he got kicked into action and turned up with 7 interceptions. I believe he led, or didn't lead. He was one of the top interceptor last year. So I think he's going to look to cash in on that, and I think that's something that might be, and in my opinion, it might be too rich for the Bears to go ahead and invest there. But he's a guy that's about 6 feet. Doesn't have the great size. Again, had a 1 season last year with 7 interceptions. Prior to that, he was just basically a special teams guy. So the guy that I had actually circled on here. I'm sorry if you want to go ahead.
No, please go ahead, please.
The couple of guys I circled on here as guys that, again, since I don't want to pay a lot of money to safeties, I want guys that are relatively young, relatively solid guys in terms of coverage, in terms of, making play on the football, and also being good, secure tacklers. And Cameron Curl is a guy from Washington, I think would be a guy that, 6'2", 198, only 24 years old, will be 25 when the season starts. But he was a 7th round pick in the 2020 draft. He started 53 games for Washington. He had 3 interceptions in his career. All actually came in that rookie campaign. He's got a 1 pick six, got 14 passes defense, a forced fumble, 5 sacks, and 15 tackles for loss. I think he's a guy that could be interchangeable if you're talking about Jaquan Brisker and himself, and a guy that can drop back into coverage. Doesn't give you the range that some of the other guys you might have on this list, like a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson or even in Winfield Jr., but a guy that could be a solid, a guy that, again, 25 years old. I want to pay for what he could, his production upcoming, not for what he's done in the past. So I think that's a guy that if the Bears are looking for a safety in free agency, that's a guy that I could maybe circle and earmark there as a potential target.
And I think that this kid Cameron Curl could be a value pick. He was a 7th rounder, and he slowly worked his way up. So
makes my point, right? Right, 7th round pick and starter.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Kyle Duggar, we watched him down in Mobile at the Super Bowl. He was one of Jim Nagy's favorites. I like him, and I like Jeremy Chin, although his pro career hasn't been as good as I expected it would be. What are your thoughts on Chin?
Yeah, Duggar, I was a guy that I know, he was a small school guy. I wasn't really high on his coverage ability coming out of college, and I think he went 2nd round. I had him as a 3rd round, 4th round guy. He went 2nd round by Bill Belichick, and hence why Bill Belichick's drafts are one of the worst. So I'd say he's a guy that might get a little bit more than what I want, even though I'm not really interested in Kyle Duggar. Jeremy Chin is a guy that I talk about, a guy that played all over the field for Carolina. Was a guy that could line up at linebacker, could line up at safety, a strong safety. Again, he might be a guy that, I think he has some injury concerns. Correct me if I'm wrong there, missed a couple games. So I think he's falling off paper. Again, I'm not sure how much he'll give you in terms of coverage. Darnell Savage is a guy that obviously, here with the Packers, he kind of fell out of favor there as well. More of a Eddie Jackson type, the guy that can, make some plays on the ball, but not really a good tackler. Julian Blackman, obviously Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's a guy I wanted last year, but coming off the Achilles and all that stuff, or was it Achilles or was it a shoulder? I forgot which injury that knocked him off for most of the season. But he's a guy that I think has kind of priced himself out of that range. But Julian Blackman, another kid that I like coming out of college, out of Utah, 6 feet 202, 25 years old. Again, we're getting a guy that's going to hit this peak of his career, his prime. 3rd round pick, by the Colts. Started 46 games in his career. Had 7 interceptions, 17 pass defense. He's got a pick 6, 2 forced fumbles, a sack, and 12 tackles for loss. So I think he's a guy that, again, I want to see a guy that can make plays on the ball. I think Blackman and Curl are guys, young guys, up and coming guys that I think could, potentially fill that void left by Eddie Jackson if they decide to go the veteran free agent route.
Right. Would you invest $10 to $12 million, ask J2K, on a guy like Julian Blackman?
J2K, that's a tough question because I would like to get him under 10 million if I can, but it all depends on what the market is out there, right? So I obviously, you talked about Antoine Winfield Jr., and that's a rare breed at safety, Aldo, because again, he went in the 2nd round. He wasn't a 1st round guy either, but he's a guy that plays slot corner. He can, like you said, he can play. He's a guy that's aggressive in terms of around the line of scrimmage, can play some linebacker for you, can drop back in coverage, is a ball hawk. So that's a different kind of player, right? Than some of the other guys we've talked about here, the Briskers and all the other guys that are coming up. So, but again, he's the only guy there that I would pay that amount of money for is Antoine Winfield Jr. But like you said, he's going to be franchise tagged by the Buccaneers. He ain't going anywhere.
Yeah. What about in the draft? Are there any safeties that you really like a lot? I know you haven't had a chance to delve into them, but based on what you know at this point, like I like Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. Saw him play a number of games this year. Super impressed with this, but he even might not be the best one. I'm forgetting who else is out at safety.
There's Cameron Kitchens, you have from Miami in your mock draft, and then there's
right.
I think it's Bullard from Georgia as well.
Georgia.
Yeah. I think those are the top three consensus right now. Yeah, I haven't really dug into the safety position yet, but I mean, Cameron Kitchens, obviously, you talked about earlier. I like the fact that he's got ball hawking skills, 11 interceptions in the last 2 years, 15 pass defense. Tyler Newby, you mentioned him. I love his size at 6'1", 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Another guy's got ball hawking ability at 13 interceptions, over his career, 11 pass defense, 3 forced fumbles. So, those are guys that, that top two guys that kind of come to the top of mind here in terms of, the safety rankings. But yeah, as we dig more into the safety, we'll probably, bring some more up here on upcoming podcasts, and we'll talk about it, because obviously that is a need now for the Bears. I think, with Elijah Hicks, I think he's a guy that's a depth guy. He was a 7th round pick a couple years ago. I don't think he's a guy that can come in and really take over as a full-time starter. So I think they do need to go and fill that spot. Like I said, if it's a veteran free agent, I would like to have someone that's young and up and coming and keep that salary to a minimum. Because again, you still have holes up front. You still need an edge rusher. You still need a defensive tackle, a 3 technique inside. Whether that's going to come from the draft or free agency, we'll see what's going to happen. But again, I gotta fill my front 7 holes first before I go invest big money on the safety.
Indeed. Strong safeties and free safeties now are interchangeable. It's almost not necessary to list them differently in most cases.
It's what the player does best, right? Like Brisker for me is better up at the line of scrimmage. He's a good blitzer. He's a guy that in terms of, he likes the physicality. Unfortunately, he gets nicked up a lot, but he's a guy that's better at the line of scrimmage. Eddie Jackson was more that guy that dropped back, and just unfortunately with the injuries, I think he lost some of his range. It wasn't the speed wasn't there as it was before, and obviously the playmaking ability didn't kind of come back from what it was in 2018. So I think you're looking for more of a guy that can be back there a second, half the field safety, maybe a guy that can play some single high safety, a guy that's got some range, sideline. But again, a guy that can make a play on the football, have some ball skills, but also be smart and know when and where to break and take good angles up to the running back if he's coming up in run defense.
And not afraid to tackle. That's a Chicago Bears staple.
I thought Eddie Jackson was going to give you a heart attack that one year.
I think I did get a heart attack. That's why I was in the hospital. Okay, a few questions I want to get to here before I get you out of here. Let's see. We'll start with Jason. He says, I sure hope they pay and lock up Jalen Johnson. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, it was a promise basically by the general manager, Ryan Poles, that Jalen's going to come back. So they'll probably put the tag on him, right?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go ahead and sign him to long term if that's what you're looking for, Jason. I think they're going to tag him, and I think he's going to play the 1 year on the tag and see what happens. Jalen can make it uncomfortable for Ryan Poles and company by saying he's not going to report or he's not going to play on a tag. So far all I've heard that he'll accept the tag. But Jalen now is gone from, I'll just want a good, respectable, top 10 salary to now I want to break the bank. I want to break the market in terms of being the highest paid corner. And I love Jalen, and I love him come out of Utah, and I love the way he plays the game. But up until this past year, he only had 1 interception, and he dropped. He had 4 this past year, and he's dropped I think 4 or 5. This last couple of seasons. So, is Jalen Johnson a shutdown corner? In my opinion, he's not a shutdown corner. He's a good corner, very good corner, right? He's a Pro Bowl corner. But he's not a Darrelle Revis in his prime. He's not a Deion Sanders in his prime. He's not a shutdown corner. So to set the market and pay him $22 million a year, that to me is too rich and it's too steep. So I believe the franchise tag is around, was it 18 million, if I'm not mistaken?
I think it's 18, yes.
So I think 1 year and that, and just kind of like, let's see what happens. And again, you drafted, Tyreek Stevenson in the second round. You drafted, Terrell Smith in the 5th round. Both kids, acquitted themselves well. Stevenson got off to a rough start. I was hard on him, but you saw him get better. And and one of the reasons why I think it is a tip of the hat to John Hoke, who is one of the better defensive back coaches in the NFL. He was here with Lovie Smith, and he even before he brought him back, I think you saw Stevenson get better. And by the end of the season, Stevenson was jumping routes, making interceptions, making things happen. So I think with Stevenson, with Smith. Again, you got Carla Gordon there, who I think is best on the outside, but he played well last year as a nickel. So you got those 3 young guys there. You can go out and draft another one this year if you want. Maybe bring in a veteran in terms of some depth. But if push came to shove and Jalen Johnson's making things uncomfortable, I think I could see the Bears trading him. They don't want to trade him. I think that what they want to do, they want to sign him, but they want to sign him to a reasonable contract. And it just doesn't look like they're going to come to terms on that aspect. But I think realistically tagging him, having him play on that tag for 1 year is probably the way they're going to go.
I agree with your assessment on Jalen Johnson, although sort of what Nomad said, they're at a point in the season, and I think it was around the time that he came up with his first pick six of his career, and that monkey was off his back. All of a sudden, he started to look like a shutdown corner, and I think the presence of Montez Sweat helped a lot, and the fact that Kyler Gordon also played strongly in the second half of the season. So, this whole secondary of the Bears right now, that's probably a position that you really don't have to draft unless you are looking for Jalen's successor. If in the third round, hey, this guy could be Jalen's successor. Let's franchise tag Jalen Johnson, and then and this guy will take over in year two. But for the most part, I don't think that we need to add a cornerback to this team. What do you think?
No, I think if Jalen stays, I think you're set there with Smith and Stevenson and Jalen, and obviously you have I think Jalen Jones is a fourth corner there as well. So I think you're set there, right? And you just fortify that defensive line and the front seven guys. So I don't think you need that. But if it comes to a point where Jalen's making things uncomfortable and he's saying he's gonna hold out, he's not gonna play, and a team comes and says, all right, we'll give you a second round pick, the pick that you lost for Montez Sweat, for example, and maybe more. Who knows? If you're Ryan Poles, you got to pull a trigger on that, because if you're not going to pay the kid, might as well send him to a team that's going to pay him, recoup some draft capital. Then you can draft a corner that can come in. And again, Terrell Smith acquitted himself well. He has to stay healthy, obviously, but he acquitted himself well. And obviously Tariq Stevenson got better, and you got Kyler Gordon, so you got three young guys there. Add a fourth guy there. You have Jalen Jones, and now you can maybe again fortify the front with some of these other draft capital stuff, and then you can live with those cornerbacks, and you can go ahead and trade Jalen Johnson if he's going to make things uncomfortable for you playing on the franchise tag.
Former Bears head coach Dave Wannstedt said the Bears should consider moving Tyreek Stevenson to the safety position because of his physical style of play, and he's got the body type for it. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think down the road, once Tyreek Stevenson gets into his career, I think that's a position that swap he could do. I think he's got the physicality. I think that's a probably position that he was going to excel in my opinion. But I think just coming off of that second half of last year, I mean, he had a pretty good turnaround there, and I think he would be a guy that I would not move now. If you ask me to do it next season, I wouldn't do that. I would just like to see what he does there at corner. But yeah, I mean, that's the same thing that I remember with Peanut Tillman, like the whole talk was he's going to move to safety eventually. He's going to move safety, and he never wanted to do it, and he never did it. So, I'm not saying that he's going to be Peanut Tillman, but I'm saying like coming off of last year, the second half, where he's making plays, he's making big plays, he's making tackles. The guy, Stevenson, again, another guy would just lower his head and just get stingers and just get concussions. And so that's another concern there as well. But, but he acquitted himself well in the second half. And I was one of the harshest critics in the first half. And I think he got better, no doubt about it. So I like him and Terrell Smith on the outside. Again, we want to mix another young guy in there. Eventually, if you do trade Jalen Johnson, you can do that. But signing Jalen Johnson to a long-term contract where he's making $22 million. And I know with these salary cap stuff, you can foot the numbers and you can spread things out. And I just don't like investing that much money in a secondary when you still have holes in your front seven.
Yeah. Let's run through some of these questions. J2K says, is there a wide receiver in free agency that you might consider signing? We talked about the show.
Yeah, Aldo and I. There's a guy I like a lot, but he's a restricted free agent. That's Jawan Jennings from 49ers. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be a nice guy. Fits that X style, receiver, big body guy who's critical on third downs. He comes up big for the 49ers on third downs, but he's restricted. So I'm not sure how much of a free agent he'll be. There's talk about Seattle might be letting go of Tyler Lockett, him being a cap casualty, obviously with the familiarity with Shane Waldron. Bears looking for a guy that could be a Z or a slot. I think Tyler Lockett, if he gets cut, could be a guy. Tyler Boyd is a guy that intrigues me in Cincinnati. He's always been a number 3, never really a number 2. Again, he'd probably come in here as a veteran who's got some size, some ability. I think that'd be a good second tier kind of signing. DJ Shark is always a guy I've liked for a long time, and Aldo that wherever he's had opportunity, he's a guy who's made plays, but unfortunately, his ability to stay healthy has been his downfall there too. So Kendrick Bourne is a quick twitch receiver. doesn't have really great speed, but but also isn't really a guy that's an X, so he's in between. The pickings are slim. I know. Although you mentioned Josh Reynolds
Yes.
from Detroit, he's a guy that was with the Rams and McVay. So I believe him and Waldron do have that bond there where they might have been with the Rams at the same time. So Josh Reynolds could be a guy, but again, not a per se big X guy, but a guy who can run the slot, a guy who can play a backup Z. I think Noah Brown came in last year, and at once Nico Collins got hurt and was given an opportunity. I think he showed his ability to be a playmaker, but again, he's more of a third receiver, which is fine, which is what you're looking for. But I stay away from the big money guys. I stay away from T. Higgins. I stay away from Michael Pittman Jr. Because especially if some of these guys that we just talked about, the top 3 or 4 guys fall to your number 9, you got to pull a trigger there and get your future opposite starter from DJ Moore in that draft, and then now you can kind of fill in with from around with some of the other guys.
Yeah, boy, Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I think that we've seen that show. We don't want to see it again.
No shit. All right, let us see what else we got here in questions. Kay asks, do you think they keep Blasingame?
That's funny you mentioned that because I don't, and I think the cap savings is 1.6 million. And I'm full disclosure, I am not a Kerry Blasingame fan. I don't think he's a really good fullback. I know I will differ on that, but with Shane Waldron, what he does is he uses more of an H-back and just like Shane McVay, with the Tyler Higbees and the Joe Everetts, guys that are tweeners, guys that are at 6'2", 60 but athletic, right? So I think that's another thing where you could look at, and this draft has guys. I haven't done a full breakdown of them, but I mean just I got Ben Sennett from Kansas State was a guy that really stood out at the Senior Bowl in terms of his ability to catch the ball. There's a guy, Jaheim Bell from Florida State, another athletic, talented kid that's got that in between in terms of he's not a tight end, but he's not a fullback. He's like that H-back type. So there's some guys out there that they could possibly bring in here as well. So we'll see what happens there in terms of the draft. But yeah, I think that, again, the cap savings are about 1.6 million, so it's not huge. But again, if it's a position that you don't utilize as your offensive coordinator that doesn't need, and you can bring in a pass catching option that can play H-back and fullback for you, like a Kyle Juszczyk that they does with the 49ers, that's the kind of player that, if you think about what they would like to bring in here, I think, Ben Sennett and Jaheim Bell from Florida State are 2 guys top of my list for that position.
Back to the wide receiver position, J2K asks about Curtis Samuel.
He's hit or miss, J2K. I mean, there's games where you'll see Curtis Samuel has 8 catches for 100-some yards, and there's 3 weeks where he has like 2 catches in the last 3 games. So it's a guy that really hasn't lived up to his draft potential coming out of Ohio State, where he was a big game potential guy that I think went in the second round, I believe second or third round, I forgot where he went, but he really is an up and down guy. And again, I'm not looking for necessarily a starter opposite of DJ Moore. I'm looking for more of a complement player and more of a depth. So if that's the case, if you go and get 2 guys in the draft, you get your X and you get a third receiver, and now you want to get another guy that maybe gives some depth. Maybe you can bring a Curtis Samuel on a 1-year cheap veteran deal, but he wouldn't be the first guy I'm calling on day 1 of free agency. That's for sure.
Notorious says that he really liked the combination of Sweat and Walker. Do we really need an edge player? Yeah, you want to have 3 good edge players.
We do, Notorious, and what we need is we need a guy opposite of Sweat that's more of that quick twitch, just speed guy, get after the quarterback, and doesn't necessarily have to be a 4-down player or a guy that can put his hand in the ground and be a tough. He's a guy that just get after the quarterback. This defense is in nickel about 65-70% of the time. So a lot of times that guy is going to be rushing the quarterback going after him. And DeMarcus Rucker, I agree, had a solid season last year. He could be your base end opposite of Sweat when you start off the game. But when you go to those passing situations, 3rd down or 2nd and 20 or something like that, you could bring in this edge guy that you get out of the draft or veteran free agent. There's a couple of veteran free agents that are really intrigue me. I'm curious if the Bears go that route, but you can bring this edge guy in, kick DeMarcus Walker into a 3 technique position where he was effective last year and the previous year when he was with Tennessee as well. So I think that's probably your best bet there is utilizing Walker as an interior rusher and bringing in another edge guy, a speed guy opposite of Montez Sweat.
Yeah, and we know the rotation too that Eberflus uses. There were a lot of plays where Sweat was off the field, so you got to have depth in that defensive line. Totally agree with Danny. Attack the trenches, no doubt about it. Cornelius asks if you had a chance to look at tight end Jaheim Bell.
Yeah, I haven't had that full dive in him. I was just kind of brought him up real quick. Again, he's one of those athletic H-back tweeners, fullback guys. Was down at the Senior Bowl. He's a guy that on a very talented Florida State offense, made some plays. He's a guy that can sneak out of the backfield, run a wheel route and get down the football field. So yeah, he's a guy to keep an eye on if they go that route in terms of get rid of a true fullback, if you will, and bring in one of these guys, these move fullbacks, / H-backs. Jaheim Bell's a guy to keep an eye on, and Ben Sennett from Kansas State, two guys that I'm going to be talking about probably a lot, previewing them as we move forward here when we talk about tight ends.
All right. And then the final question is going to come in here from Ant Moss. He says, would you address edge in free agency and focus more offensive line in the draft? This question was done like 15 minutes into the show. So we've basically covered that, but go ahead and add anything you want to that.
You know what, Ant Moss, I would not mind it. I would not mind it going ahead and addressing the edge in free agency. Again, there's big money guys out there, the Josh Allens, the Daniel Hunter. I don't think those guys are where Poles is going to hit it. There's guys like Bryce Huff from the Jets. There's guys like Greenyard from the Texans. These are guys, young guys that are not household names, but guys that are effective at getting after the quarterback. Those could be potential guys that the Bears target in free agency. I do think they're going to address the defensive line in free agency, whether it's an edge guy or another interior guy. We don't know, but I think they will attack it defensive line via free agency. But then also in terms of the draft, yes, this is a pretty good year for offensive lineman. And if you're at number 9, you're sitting there and no one wants to trade up and all the receivers are gone, you can do worse than getting Joe Alt from Notre Dame and plugging him in at left tackle and kicking Braxton Jones to left guard. There's a lot of talk about in the interior there, a lot of uncertainty for me at least, right? So if you're going to bring in a young quarterback, whether it's Caleb Williams or Drake May, or if you can even keep Justin Fields, you need to solidify that interior of the offensive line. We know they need a center, right? Whether they go get the kid Evan Brown from Seattle, who's a free agent that is familiar with the system, we'll see what happens there. But guys, Nate Davis to me was a bad signing last year, and I know he had personal stuff and that kind of threw off his season. But that Green Bay game, he was one of the worst offensive linemen out there in that season finale, right? So he's a big question mark for me. Tevin Jenkins, I like his progress. I like what he's done when he's healthy. When he's healthy, he's on the field. Tevin Jenkins makes a difference. But again, he's not healthy. And can you, as a Bears organization, can you go on and count on Tevin Jenkins as being there for 17 games for you? I'm afraid not. So you got a position against center. You might need, a couple of guards at least, right? So I think this is, a guy we brought up earlier in the show with Ian, Coleman from TCU. A guy's got the length, the athletic ability to play left tackle, but also can kick inside to play left guard. That versatility would be nice. I would we talked about some of the big guys in terms of center. Zach Frazier from West Virginia is a guy I like a lot. Talk about the kid from Oregon who gives you some of that position versatility. Jackson Powers, he can play some center, he can play some guard for you as well. So, they're still keeping that. We know they're keeping the wide zone system, right? They want athletic offensive linemen, guys that can move laterally, guys that can maintain their blocks, and guys that can get to that second level defender quickly enough. So, we know what they're looking for, and this is the draft. They got plenty of guys that can plug inside, and even some outside tackles as well. So, it's curious to see what happens. Obviously, I would like either that ninth pick to be either one of these receivers or an edge guy if they don't address that position in free agency.
All right, we've got 2 hours of show behind us. Let's pull the plug again. A number of other questions, but we're gonna. I promised J2K that we're going to get to those players. I got to send Danny the list of players that have been asked over the last few shows, and Danny's going to report on every single one that he can make time for. So we'll definitely keep our promise there. Danny, any final words to your fans?
No, just keep sending in those players. Whoever you guys want me to go and scout, we'll go ahead and do another position group next week. Obviously, next week we'll talk about some of the stuff that's going on at the combine. This is where stuff gets done, guys. This is where deals are made. So things are going to be filtering out in terms of rumors and all that stuff. Don't believe everything you hear. This is lying season, as Greg has said before in the past. So, but this is where these guys are all huddled in one area and they make trades. So, I think the whole thing with Justin this week, him scrubbing his social media is interesting. His explanation today really didn't make sense, in my opinion, in terms of he just wants to get away from football, doesn't want to hear about it. Well, the Bears don't tweet about you being traded or Instagram you about you being traded, Justin. So I'm not sure how that all works, but I think that unfortunately is going to be the path they're going to take. I think they're going to go ahead and trade him, and I think they're going to go ahead and draft the quarterback. Who the quarterback is going to be, we'll see. But interesting stuff will be popping up this next week here, along with the testing.
You had a really good theory. You said, you were speculating, of course, but that perhaps maybe that the Bears let Justin Fields know, or his agent know, that they were going to shop him around, that some offers started to come in at the Senior Bowl, and those offers were probably intensified at the Combine. The agent may have called up and said, hey, well, can I give my client a status report on what you guys are thinking, and the Bears might have been honest, and that infuriated Justin, who's really, if you believe him, really wants to be a Chicago Bear. But I thought that was a really good theory, Danny.
Yeah, I think that's what happened, because I think Ryan Poles has that relationship with Justin Fields where he's going to give him that heads up, say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to end up using the pick on a quarterback. We are going to go ahead and trade you. Maybe he's even asked them, like, is there a certain team you like and we can try and get engaged? But because for Poles and the Bears, it's best that they have multiple suitors for Justin. And I think a ton of teams you hear about, Pittsburgh and Atlanta, I think Atlanta probably be a better situation for him with Arthur Smith. I'm sorry, not Arthur Smith. Pittsburgh situation with Arthur Smith now being the offensive coordinator. I remember he is the guy that I wanted Justin to come here to be the Bears offensive coordinator so they could work with Justin. So I think he would be a nice fit there in Pittsburgh. Atlanta is his hometown, so that might be something there as well. But I think they've told him that they're going to go ahead and trade him, that they're going to draft a quarterback. I don't think they've made the decision in terms of which quarterback they're going to draft. Me personally, I don't think they've done that because they still haven't met with these guys yet. And I think that's a big part of the process of interviewing these guys and getting to know these guys, especially Caleb Williams coming into the draft without an agent, having his dad being one of those dads that meddles into his businesses. That could be something that they may not want to touch. Who knows? We'll see. But again, that's something that I think Justin knows that the writing's on the wall. And I think that's something that's going to happen, whether it's going to happen during the Combine or after the Combine. But I think obviously it can't be official till after March 13 when the new league year starts. So.
Great stuff, Danny. Thanks for all your hard work and prepping for the show and your insight. And thank you, Ian Cummings. Those of you who are not following Ian on Twitter or X, it is at I, C _ draft Ian Cummings. He is the Pro Football Network draft analyst, does a great job over there, and he was a great interview. Listening to him and Danny was fun. And we've got baseball talk tomorrow. Yeah, baseball's around the corner. Danny, how's your team looking? Yeah,
baseball.
Pitchers and catchers. Yeah, I know, right?
Baseball. This is draft season. Baseball doesn't start until May or in June for me. What are you talking about?
Well, if you tune into Crosstalk, our Thursday afternoon baseball show, that's what Vinny does for half the show, talk about the NFL draft. So join him tomorrow. I think they're going to go at 2:00. Him and Joe usually do a show together. And then on Friday, the Willis twins will talk more Bears football, and weekend sports betting tips follows them on Friday. So we got more live programming ahead, and you can catch everything on our archives. I don't know why that guy is up there, but you can catch everything in our archives if you subscribe to the YouTube channel Barroom Network. Danny, take care. We'll talk to you next week, brother.
You talking baseball?